She was
It's
thinking
like
about
a
it.
Starbucks experience.
Too much. The whole point of this was to try and craft questions that should like literally ask on the test. I know the test is like 2 weeks away, but like, you know, she doesn't give us the questions like straightforward. She asks them reverse, even though she taught it one way. So anyway, so we'll go through real quick. What is hemoglobin? And I'll go, and then you, if you guys like, for organization's sake, I'll ask a question and then you answer it, and then you answer it, and then I'll answer it. And if you don't know it, then you move it to the next person. Or you can blurt it if you know it.
Okay, so hemoglobin is a protein that transports oxygen.
Yes. So you answered 1 and 2. Perfect. And then
What's number 2?
Oh, what is the function?
Oh,
yeah,
function.
that's what FXN is.
Okay.
What is it again? Hemoglobin is a protein that.
Hemoglobin is a protein that transports oxygen.
Okay.
And remember, it's a polyprotein.
Um,
And
that means
it's
there's-
made up of
There's 3 polypeptides.
4.
4?
Yeah.
Then there's
Well,
3. It's a
peptide
3
chains, you say?
Oh,
Or
4
no,
subunits.
yeah.
Yeah,
4
are
subunits and 3 polypeptide chains.
4 subunits are
polypeptides.
polypeptides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So subunit is equal to polypeptide. So polypeptide is multiple peptides.
Multiple amino acids that are
Yes.
held together by peptides.
Exactly.
And this is taken out of the book. The function of hemoglobin is to transport oxygen, and it
Mhm.
must be able both to bind strongly to oxygen and to release oxygen easily, depending on conditions.
Precisely. Cool. Be good? My next question, this thing right here, it is made up of 2 different types of units. What are those 2 different types of units?
Beta.
Yep.
And there's 2 beta and 2 alpha.
Exactly.
Wait, what is that? For the
So
subunits?
out
I
of those
see,
4
okay.
subunits, then 2 are alpha and 2 are beta.
Gotcha.
I don't know if she'll ask that, but she might. I don't know how detailed she's gonna get, but you never know. Because she, like, a test question could be like, hemoglobin is
So
composed
2
of 3 alpha, 1 beta, 2 alpha, 1 beta, 4 alpha, 0 beta. You know.
So 2 of the subunits are alpha helices, and then 2 are beta pleated sheets.
Precisely.
Okay.
2 alpha, 2 beta. That's what that 4 makes up. That was my attempt here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Question 3. What is the name of the binding curve?
For hemoglobin?
Yeah.
Sigmoid.
Exactly. It's okay. Daniel's next.
Yeah.
And then why is it sigmoidal? You guys were comfortable with that term, right? That sigmoidal. Everybody's comfortable.
Mhm.
Okay,
Cool.
because it has less oxygen, so it releases. I mean, it releases oxygen more frequently than the other one. So
Exactly.
It will just drop.
Exactly. And the way I phrased exactly what you said was the transition from weak to strong binding. So here's like my little graph where you have strong binding here at this plateau. This is like percent oxygen saturation versus pressure. And so in the lungs, very high pressure, oxygen is being like really held tightly. And then as you go to the left, now oxygen is being released. And so you're going from strong, 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 weak, 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 releasing oxygen until you're completely released. Whereas myoglobin, you guys know, I'll let you draw myoglobin on that chart.
Yeah.
It'll just look like, so that
So
you know
that
the
my
difference.
wasn't going like.
No, my
Trick
hemoglobin
No.
is the jaw.
This one right here.
Isn't it like this?
Yeah.
Oh.
You want to do it again?
Sorry.
So it's like this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason why I stress that is because I
Sorry.
can see her. No, it's all good, baby.
Kristen.
Kristen?
Sorry.
Okay, this word, tetramer.
Uh-huh.
What is that?
4.
Ooh, I think that's like dimer, but tetramer means there's 4.
Yeah.
4 polypeptides.
Yeah.
You know, like 2 is dimer is 2
I don't think
polypeptides.
she'll ask
4
us that.
polypeptides are tetramer.
Oh, okay, so that's all it's saying.
Yeah.
All right, I was getting a.
Yeah.
See how it says is a tetramer, comma, because it's seen 4 polypeptide chains, comma, like, so that's what
Okay.
that means. But
Yeah.
I didn't know. I literally asked her that question the other day, what a dimer is, and then
Uh-huh.
she was like, dimer means 2, and tri means 3,
Yeah.
and tetra is 4.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Back from organic chem.
Mm,
What question?
So now we're on 5. What is the definition? Okay, so give this definition. Hemoglobin's, I'll just pass it back. Hemoglobin's efficiency at unloading O2 into the tissue. Let me say that again so I say it right. Hemoglobin's efficiency at unloading that O2 into the tissue. So what is that definition of?
They're less sensitive. Is that what you're getting
Starts
at?
with a C.
Cool.
And the hint is together.
Oh, is this the 15 degree?
Covalent?
Close. It does have to do with that, yes. So what is that called? As it rotates, the oxygen is binding. What is it called?
It's the 3.6 rotation. It's the
Oh.
It's just one word. It's 2 words, and a synonym for it is together. And it's okay, I'll just give it to you. It's cooperative transport.
Cooperative.
Yeah.
it's
There's a
hemoglobin's
multiple.
efficiency at unloading O2 to the tissue.
Yeah. So that can be phrased in multiple ways, but I feel like this is maybe one way that she might pose it because this is directly from the lecture.
So the answer is cooperative.
Yeah, let me write it right here. Cooperative transport. And why is that important? Because you see how previously I was asking, give the function of hemoglobin, and the function of hemoglobin is to transport, but it does that in a specific way, and the way it does it is cooperatively. And so the next questions will go back and tie back why unloading O2 is a cooperative effort. It's not like it's essentially, I don't know if she'll ask this, and I'm probably gonna say that a lot, but I feel like when she spent like 4 to 5 minutes on cooperative transport, it was talking about the release and the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. Anyway, the next question will make more sense. Okay, so blank increases O2's carrying capacity due to blank structure.
Quaternary.
Exactly. So quaternary. So and
blank.
this one has to do with this one.
So increases O2's carrying capacity? What do you mean by that?
Its ability to carry oxygen.
Oh.
So this is kind of a trick. It's the one right above here.
Cooperative.
Cooperative transport. So I put these two to form 2 different ways she may ask it. And this is directly from the lecture. Cooperative so the whole point of cooperative transport is to increase the O2 carrying capacity so that when it gets into the tissue, it's able to release it. I think of it of a rich man in a strip club who just starts like spreading a whole bunch of $1 bills.
This is the thing that it rotates 15 degrees.
Exactly.
So what is that 15 degrees doing? It's allowing more oxygen to come in.
Exactly. It's like I wish I had a really good example.
It's changing the first protein so that the others follow in sequence.
Say what?
Isn't it changing the first protein so that the other 3 follow in a sequence?
Exactly. That whole rotation is that conformational change. So remember how she kept saying
Conformational change. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every single time that one binds, right? Like say you're going to a party and there's absolutely no one there. Then one person shows up, right? Then you're more likely to go to that party because there's one person there that you know. Then 2 people go there.
Mm-hmm.
Then 4 people go there. Then 10 people go there. Now it's a party. Basically, cooperative transport is like a party, whereas when you have one oxygen that's bound, the more that gets bound, the more it rotates and the better it can transport oxygen.
So you're saying the point of cooperative transport is, say what you said again?
The point of the whole goal, the whole point, the main meat of this is that cooperative transport is increases oxygen's O2's carrying capacity, or should I say hemoglobin's carrying capacity? Yeah, I should probably say hemoglobin's capacity to carry oxygen. That's probably a better way to state that.
Sorry, what was it? The other word that we just said, the C?
That was a conformational change. Because remember, as it does that little turn, it's slowly but surely has that little conformational change, but it's
So
subtle.
it's to increase hemoglobin's oxygen carrying capacity.
Yes, ma'am. And this is due to its, what structure you say, Kristen?
Quaternary.
Right? And back on that quaternary structure, right? If this is my hemoglobin and it's bound to 4 different subunits, right? So if these are my 4 different subunits of hemoglobin, right?
Yeah, so the one changes and
then it can bind to 4 different, for each of these subunits, O2 can bind to it, right? And that's why you have that sigmoidal shape, because of the 4 units that it can bind to. Cool beans?
what's the H on there? That's just stands for
That's hemoglobin. I can spell hemoglobin, or you can spell it hemoglobin. It depends whether you're in England or here. They spell it hemoglobin. They spell it with HAEMOGL. Anyway, hemoglobin. Okay, next question. Everybody good with that last idea concept?
Getting there.
Okay, cool. When O2 binds, how many degrees? You can't answer this because you already told me. When O2 binds, how many degrees does it rotate?
15.
Oh, okay. So you,
And then it's the
special.
3.6.
3.6 is for the
3.6 is
amino
how
acid
many
terminals.
residues,
Yeah.
Right. That's just in an alpha helix.
That's for alpha helix.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, 8. Blank state is associated with deoxy, and blank state is associated with oxy. And so let me say the whole thing. Blank state, right? T and R, all right? We have tense and we have relaxed state. Okay, and so one of these states is associated with deoxygenated hemoglobin, and then we have another state that's associated with oxygenated hemoglobin. As you guys remember, oxygenated means what?
Saturated.
Means bound.
Yeah.
Bound.
Right, means bound. Yeah,
Right.
sorry.
It's R.
Sorry, I think of it bound, but I think saturated totally works too. But in my brain, I see oxygenated bound, and so that means deoxygenated means
Unbound.
exactly unbound or
So
free,
that's T.
or unsaturated if you want to think about it that way. Just trying to think.
So you're
about how
saying
she puts it.
deoxygenated is unbound?
No,
Yeah.
no, deoxygenated. Yeah, sorry.
And you said number 7 was 15 degrees?
Yes, 15 degrees.
So
That one
it's-
actually, sorry, I just put this together so
Sure,
it
sure.
helps anyone. So oxygen is the word, right? But like if
Right.
you D, then it's
Then you take it away.
well, no, okay, hold on, let me just deoxygenated unbound,
Exactly.
and then oxygenated bound,
Precise.
like without the.
So it's the T, which one is which again? The one
T
on the
is
left is
unbound.
open. So T.
So
T is deoxy and R is oxy.
exactly, and I don't know. Do you
She
guys
says
know
in
of the
Roxy.
bound? Do you guys know
It
of the
does.
brand called Roxy?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I think of it. I think of that.
It doesn't sound like she might even
Teeny
acknowledge
pepper.
that on the test though, because she was like, "That's just another thing you have to memorize." So I feel like as long as you know unbound, deoxy, oxy. I mean,
You talking about the T associated with
yes.
D?
I mean, like it's good to know. We should know it, but it
Mm.
doesn't sound like that might be something that is on the test.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Maybe not. Who knows? But I'm just whatever. It's good to know.
fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I brought it up because I remember her.
Yeah. I didn't mean that we shouldn't know it. I guess I was just thinking like.
It's-
yeah, it's
saying
probably
it
not
out
might be
loud,
stress,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
And
yeah.
T is the bound one?
No, unbound.
Unbound.
T is the unbound one, and then if you look at the diagram, the T, like, say this is my attempt at an amino acid. The T looked like this, right? Whereas by comparison, the R state was like, it was
Mhm.
close. This is insinuating that it's ready to accept an oxygen, whereas this one, right?
Closed off.
That one's
already
closed
has
off.
it
It already has its
bound.
oxygen bound. So for me, it was messed up. I had it in my, actually, I'm not going to share that with you because it's going to mess you guys
So the
up.
other one will not accept O2, or it's just less likely?
It will.
This one is
oh,
ready to accept an O2.
And the other one already has it.
That one already
So
has
yeah,
it.
well,
right? This one is like if I'm running upstairs. Anyway, we'll get to
okay.
that. We'll get to that. Okay.
Which
Next
state
question.
binds to a higher affinity of O2? So the R.
Oh, right.
No, T.
Wait,
Because
which one?
it's unbound.
Oh, I see.
I
Okay,
have-
I'm reading it wrong.
I
So T.
have for 9A, and I don't know if you guys
So
agree
because
with
it's
it.
unbound, it wants to accept
Which
more
state
oxygen?
binds with a higher affinity to O2? So
I guess the question is,
I have this as R.
Okay, you have that in your notes, are? Because
Yeah.
I was just saying T based on what I would think, but I didn't know the answer.
This one messed
so
me up
maybe it's just the
too,
way it's worded. Which state
Because-
binds?
because this was like, yeah. How did this? It said in the lecture, it was like, it says it was talking about
that
affinity.
makes sense.
Does that make
Because
sense?
it's like clearly it's the one that has the oxygen, so it would bind
Right?
quicker or faster or whatever, right? With
Right.
oxygen?
This one, yeah, this one is already bound.
So because it
it
has
has a high
oxygen-
affinity for being bound because it's already bound to it. So
yeah,
you would
like if T had a higher affinity, it would have already been bound.
yeah,
You know.
So you're
Exactly.
saying so it's the R because it's the one that has the O2 and what?
because it has an O2 bound. So O2 is
So
bound.
and therefore it can take more. I guess I'm not reading. the
No,
question
because
right.
it's already bound.
Yeah.
That's how we're saying it. I mean, we may have to double check with her.
I
But
just really, it's frustrating because it's open and it says it's tense, right? Like in your mind, you would think that because it's open.
Because
and
I
then-
read that question as which one can accept more O2.
Well, read the next question and then maybe this one above will
No.
make sense. So which state is more, okay, no, that's not gonna help you.
well, no, for 9A, I would say read it as which one is more likely to bind with
Mine.
oxygen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with you.
because then it's already bound, so obviously that's the one that would be more likely.
Mm-hmm. And
See,
so,
because you could read it as this is more likely to bind because it has
Totally. That's why I said
Yeah.
T originally.
and that's how you, yeah, and that would be like a tricky quiz question because then you have to realize that affinity, right, for something means that like it's more or less already like bound in some way. Like if I have a high affinity to, like if hemoglobin has a high affinity to oxygen, that you can imagine that hemoglobin is bound then to that oxygen and it's not ready to release until it gets to an acidic environment. So maybe that's going further. We'll keep going, and this one will when we get back to BOHR, T and R will make more sense. Okay, we move on or
Mhm.
not yet? Okay, it's
Mhm.
okay. We can stop at any time and like okay.
Yep.
Okay, so which state is more unstable?
T.
Right.
Mhm.
Why?
Because it doesn't have oxygen?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's true because it doesn't have oxygen. Usually it
Because it's
wants to be
open
bound.
and it's vulnerable.
Yeah, it's like whenever
Like,
whenever something
Notebook.
wants to be bound to something but doesn't have it bound, it's just more unstable. Like if you think
Right.
of an electric or electron
configuration.
configuration,
I'm
when
with
when their outer
Yeah.
shell isn't
Mhm.
bound, they're just more unstable.
Yeah,
Right,
like
right.
everybody strives to be Xenon because it's all.
Dude, I read this meme
I
that
just want to be stable.
I
I just
read
want a full octet.
I read this meme that said, I just figured out when somebody told me to hold your horses, they're telling me to be stable. Isn't that
What did
kind of
they
fun?
think it was?
Oh, you knew that? I never would have even thought that. I never thought about that phrase. Hold your horses?
Be stable.
Yeah, like because
There's
you're
a lot
like
about-
chill
yeah.
out, But it's like,
Are you talking about stable, like a horse stable?
Yeah.
well, like
Which
yeah,
holds horses.
isn't that crazy?
So now I'm gonna draw a horse and
The horse goes through that hole.
gallops through, and then
Jumps
you
through
win.
the hoops.
I never actually thought about that. Either.
Right?
I
I
thought it was like
never
when the
would've.
house is like chill out. Okay, I see what you're saying. Just giving the information tingles like Spider-Man. Okay, next question. Okay, so now we're gonna shift gears and talk about BOHR.
Oh, damn you, BOHRS.
Oh, anything. Okay, so hemes. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about affinity. Does everyone have a comfortable understanding of affinity?
Yeah, no.
That means a high attraction, right?
Right.
Okay.
High attraction, hot bound, in whichever way you want.
So
Because I think that's
affinity could be another word for bound. I mean,
Yeah.
attraction.
attraction, bound, connected, like, yeah, affinity to. Later down the line, she's going to talk about CO and cyanide and how it has a higher affinity. Hemoglobin has a way higher affinity, but we won't get into that quite yet. Let's knock out the core concepts for Bohr, which I think are super quizzable, testable. Okay, so hemoglobin's affinity, right? Hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen increases or decreases in the presence of CO2 and H. And let me preface this by, do you remember in the beginning of the lecture, she said that these two molecules affect what? This is an actual question. I can't remember. I wish I had the picture. Actually, no. This is
what is it?
thing.
So you're saying up
so
and down.
hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen. All right.
Okay.
Increases or decreases in the presence of CO2 and acid. Thank you. Sorry. pH.
So the affinity to bind would decrease in both of those, right?
Yes.
In both.
Wait. So
Yes. Decrease. So this is, yeah, you're right. This is both. So hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen, right? Its bonding ability decreases, meaning lets go of oxygen in the presence of a high CO2 environment and a low pH. Why? So remember, CO2 is actually a Lewis acid. You can think of CO2 as an acid because remember, in the tissue, it tends to be much more acidic than if you compare it to the lungs, right? So if you think about if you're comparing acidity levels between your tissue and your lungs has way higher pressure, okay? And then your tissue has way lower pressure. In your lungs, in your tissue, it's considered to be much more acidic. And so when you talk about affinity for hemoglobin, right? Then when blood gets to that area, you're thinking about, well, okay, it's really acidic here. I'm gonna need more oxygen to help with this equilibrium. So when you talk about the tissue, the affinity for O2 gets released, and the synonym is for release is decreasing affinity. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, promise. Because I could have said that better, but my whole point, my whole goal was that
So
if you're talking about, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that's
I'll go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Is the hemoglobin, if there's okay, so if the oxygen decreases because the presence of CO2 is increased,
Yes.
is the hemoglobin being bound to the CO2? That's why the oxygen is being removed?
Say that again.
Is hemoglobin binding to the CO2, and that's why the O2 is?
That is the next question. So you are,
No.
That's perfect.
So
That's
you're
perfect.
saying when CO2 is increased and pH is decreased, Heme's affinity for O2 decreases.
I don't know if this
Because-
will help you, but instead of saying pH decrease,
You could just
say
say,
H plus increase.
yeah, here.
Because you're increasing acid. So
That'd be better.
those both are going up,
Yeah.
so affinity is going down.
But you
So
know-
it's the
yeah.
same. Okay.
So you remember
So
that
you can
pH has
rewrite
an
it
opposite
as-
relationship than
Yeah.
to hydrogen.
So basically, you could rewrite it as.
What?
You can just remember whenever you are talking about acidity, if you ever see any type of acidity, whether it's CO2
It
or
means
you're talking about
addition
hydrogen,
of
then
hydrogen.
you know your pH. If you're getting a question asked about pH, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be the opposite because the negative log of hydrogen concentration is opposite the pH. So that was
So you could say Heme's affinity down, arrow down, equals up, 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 up.
in the presence of CO2, high CO2, low pH, then we're letting go of O2. We're releasing oxygen into the tissue. Give me my oxygen. Give me my oxygen. Bitch, but I have my oxygen. Okay. Trying to bring Rihanna into it. Okay.
Oh my god, I'm so hungry.
Hungry.
I didn't realize I was a
She
Sunday
bought me a meat stick. Do you want to buy me a meat stick?
No, oh god, no thank you.
Does
Sorry,
not-
no.
Are you a vegetarian?
There you go.
Okay.
No, thank you. I'm good.
Um,
Appreciate the offer.
all right, no problem. Gotcha. Write the equation for write the equation for carbon dioxide reaction to make carbonic acid and water. So who wants to?
Yeah, not so much.
Mm-mm.
So you're saying,
If somebody volunteers, I'll walk you through it. Because
so
this
you're
is
saying
not going
equation
away.
for carbon dioxide reaction.
Yeah.
So CO2
Okay, I got you guys. I got you. This is mine.
Reaction.
So what does it say? CO2.
To reaction to make.
plus. Wait, she wrote it in my notebook, didn't she?
Yeah, this is not going away because
What is it to make?
Sorry. So write the equation for carbonic dioxide. Write the equation for carbon dioxide reaction to make bicarbonate and carbonic acid. So CO2 combines with, I think water. Right?
CO2 plus H2O
Yeah.
yields H2CO3 yields H plus plus. Oh, H, yeah.
I don't like
plus
this stuff.
HCO3 negative. Sorry about that.
Or,
Or you know.
right? HCO3.
H plus and then HCO3.
Okay.
So H2CO2? No, H2CO3.
Okay.
Was that a 2 or 3? That's a 2.
2. H2CO3.
H2CO3. Thank you.
And then the arrow goes both ways the second
Yes,
time.
on both of them.
Thank you.
And then it goes to H.
As you can see, my struggle is real with it
It's
too.
such a long time for this.
I feel like this is not going to go away, and I feel like the way that she posed the question on the last test, this will come back, not to haunt us, but just to remind us I'm not going
crap on
away.
this one.
And the reason it is because this is our number one way of getting rid of CO2 that's in excess in our tissues. We breathe it off. Hemoglobin has the ability to get rid of CO2, but not as efficiently as us just straight up breathing. So
What? Okay, sorry, can we just say that again?
sure, this is our number one way of ridding ourselves from CO2, getting rid of CO2. CO2 in excess can be toxic. And so our number one way of ridding ourselves of excess CO2 is by breathing. And so this is the equation that we talk about, the buffer that helps us. So
Okay.
I don't feel like this is going away. So that's why I brought it up.
Oh,
And
that's
then-
right, because
remember when-
H2CO3 and then HCO3 are conjugates.
Precise.
Oh.
And so that's our buffer system that makes sure that just what you said, the conjugate acid and its base is our number one buffer system. The reason why I brought that up is that she mentioned 3 ways. Does anyone remember the other 2?
Was this the other day? Or
This was the
today?
last class.
No, I haven't.
The other 2 one was the kidneys. In the kidneys, we have HPO4, but I won't get into that because she didn't really delve deeply into that. Okay, next. All right. Tissue. Okay, muscle tissue have often produce what 2 species? What 2 molecules?
Muscle tissue often produces what?
It's in one of these previous questions too. So
What 2 molecules?
yes. Remember I said remember how I was talking about in our tissues it's much more acidic. So
lactic acid?
lactic.
CO2.
So
I
lactic
don't think that's not what
acid.
you're talking about.
And this is what I'll write for to represent lactic
So it's an
acid.
increase in.
And what
And
else?
CO2.
CO2.
Exactly.
Oh.
Perfect.
What do you mean produce? Like, okay, this is it. So you're saying they produce these all the time or during, isn't it like more
In
specific,
balance.
more like during stress?
Oh, I mean, it could be. It's just in terms of like, just think of it in terms of relative to the lungs. You're gonna have a higher amount of
Oh, I see.
acidic acid in your tissues.
Right, yeah,
That's all.
because I mean, I would think they're always doing this, but then if you work out really hard or something, it kind
Then
of
it's
happens,
even
then
more.
that's where the
Imbalance.
graph comes in, yeah, and then it would be an increase of lactic acid.
Precise.
Okay.
So you can call this lactic acid. You can call it whatever, as long as. Let me say that again. Hemoglobin,
Uses.
right? Our hemoglobin uses what? Let me give you a hint. what two molecules as a chemical signal to release O2. So you have hemoglobin chilling, and it
CO2
gets
and acid.
exactly.
Okay.
Did you guys get that?
Because it's the same, right? So it's like because there's an increase in them, then
Mhm.
that's when it will release it.
Exactly. And so say on the quiz, right, or the test, she says, what are some signals that would make hemoglobin start to release oxygen at a much higher level? Well, in the presence of CO2 and acid, then you're gonna have to start releasing. Here's the release. Here's the release right here. You're gonna start releasing oxygen into the tissues so that you get to a kind of hemostasis. Okay. Does that make sense, y'all? This is straight from the lecture, because I think she might switch stuff and make it like quizzable, testable. But yeah, I would say that CO2 and hydrogen is a synonym for chemical signals. Like you can call these guys like chemical signals. The way
Chemical signalers.
Yeah, definitely. If you have an excess of it, it's like, okay, send in the big boys, O2. Okay, moving on. Don't worry, there's only 7 more questions left. And then a little summary that I made.
So wait, sorry, what this is number 11, right? Equation for carbon dioxide reaction. What's that word?
To make bicarbonate.
To make bicarbonate,
Sorry.
carboxylic acid. Okay,
Mhm.
no, you're good.
I
I
missed
just, yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. O2, now this is for board. O2, what did I write? Oxygen.
Heme, does that say heme?
Yeah, it's heme. Okay, hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen increases or decreases as pH decreases.
So what's O2? Wait, so you're saying O2 heme affinity?
O2, oh, sorry. So hemoglobin's, sorry, that I posed it, but there's another way to write it, but
Okay,
when
so
I
you're
put
saying
that hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen, that whole thing, the whole hemoglobin bound to oxygen, hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen, does it increase or does it decrease as the pH goes down?
It decreases.
That's right. Because we're releasing oxygen. So I said that twice because she must have said that 4 times. And I feel like that is definitely like quizzable. Like she can, and I could say it another way. Hemoglobin's affinity to oxygen increases or decreases as CO2 decreases, as hydrogen decreases, as hydrogen increases. Like it can be asked multiple ways, and you have to feel remember how she said don't memorize it? It's better to understand the relationship, because if she asks it the way you didn't memorize it, you'll get it wrong. So you can, and then this will summarize that whole
So
thing.
just remember, like acid has a low affinity for O2, or at least hemoglobin with hemoglobin, right?
That is what you don't do, because, and why? Because if she asks you and you memorize, if you memorize that right there and she asks it opposite, then you answer opposite, right? Because if she says, right,
What would the opposite be?
the opposite, okay, so I'm gonna ask it
what
opposite.
if you draw like a little, like, remember how we did like
With the Ka and the PKA?
remember how we did like the chart with the
That's what this is.
wow, I'm totally the delta A negative, then that means this is
Oh.
positive. Remember that?
Yeah, that's what this is for.
Oh, okay.
That's at the end though.
Okay.
That's the board summary. Boring summary.
Oh, okay.
So I will do that on this thingy, and that way you can have that in your mind. So if she asks it any kind of way, you can answer it.
Okay.
Perfect each time.
Okay.
So I'll move on, and we'll keep touching back to this theme. Okay. So the result. So the above answer, right? The above answer in which hemoglobin's affinity to decrease when the pH is low results in
Lower
increase or a decrease in oxygen in the tissue.
Decrease. Wait, sorry, what's the first? Oxygen ability to bind to hemoglobin decreases as pH decreases, right?
What is it? Results in
So that it results
lower
in
O2 because isn't it
decreases,
releasing
yeah.
it?
this is okay, so the way this is worded, right? the way I'm trying to word it is, do you have more oxygen in the tissue or less oxygen in the tissue?
Oh, if it's getting released,
Yeah.
Where does
Less.
it go?
In,
in
the tissue, right? So you have
So more,
There
because
you
it's getting
go.
released from the lungs
yes.
to the tissues.
Yes. You see how you see. Okay, so what I see what you're saying. The reason why I said release. Now I'm talking about how much, relatively in general, is there a lot of oxygen there now or little? Is it being taken away or is it, you see?
Yeah.
So the reason why I asked it differently is because she could ask about the pH. She can ask about the hydrogen ion concentration. She can ask about the oxygen.
So there's more O2 in the tissues that's not binded.
That's not bounded,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Because it's being released.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
wait, but I was kind of not paying attention to
Oh,
the
no, it's
original
okay,
one.
it's
So
okay.
so the first one is the hemoglobin affinity to bind to oxygen decreases, right? As pH decreases.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then that
'Cause-
really results in an increase in oxygen to the tissues.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you feel comfy with that? And I can reiterate that too, because
Yeah.
we went kind of fast.
I'm getting there.
Okay. You tell me what that means. That first and second sentence. Because I know we went kind of fast and I know you were writing, so.
So if there's a lower pH, which means less
More acid.
acid,
Right,
or more acid, because it's opposite.
right.
So if there's more acid, O2 wants to push out to the tissues.
Exactly.
Correct. So it's
So
getting
that means you
released.
have more or less oxygen in the tissue.
Less.
More or less oxygen in your tissue.
More.
Right. Because it's released.
So it's from your lungs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Precisely. And that sentence right there, that last part, releasing the O2, is looking down here. It's like closer
So
to
it's
here.
less.
Up here is where it's bound, right? This
Uh-huh.
is bound. Releasing.
But as the pH
releasing.
lowers, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Is that good?
Yeah.
We're getting there, y'all. I just really, I'm in a million different ways because I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but I just want us to do well. And this is much tougher than the first one. Like these kinds of 15. Blank stabilizes the T state of a quaternary structure. Try again. Remember we asked this question? So now we're talking about this. Let me draw this. Let me draw this real quick. This will make more sense when I draw it. Okay. Now.
Oh yeah, no, that doesn't help.
Okay.
Damn. Diagrams. Salt bridge.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
Right? And you know where I was going for, right? I was trying to make a
It's a
positive.
positive and negative, so it's a firmer charge.
So right there, that's the answer, salt bridge. Because she saw that I was trying to make,
Oh yeah.
remember from whatchamacallit?
Yeah.
We were just at,
In
so,
organic chem, these are.
and the
I don't
T
even
state,
remember those. Remember again.
No,
you don't remember, oh, from organic alchemy, like, yeah, we didn't really talk about salt
Right,
bridges
yeah.
very much in my thing. But
That's
Okay.
a tertiary though.
this is talking about the T state in terms of T state is
Yeah, but
the,
salt bridges are in tertiary structure.
do you have that salt bridges are in quaternary structures too? Or is it just tertiary?
It's just tertiary because quaternary is the binding of the polypeptide
Mhm.
bonds.
Here, let me double check and show you where I got it from. So, because I don't want to
Okay,
give
yeah.
you guys wrong info. So I'm on your side. Let me see.
Because and then we went in and the hydrogen will destabilize the salt bridges, and that's the tertiary.
Is it only tertiary?
Yeah, because salt bridges, disulfide linkages, hydrogen bonds, those are all in
For tertiary
structure.
structures. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Let me show you this.
But I can see what.
But I see where you're coming from. Yeah, that is true.
This is T state of a quaternary structure.
Have you seen this?
Uh-uh.
I'm trying to remember where I got this from. That's
Is
so
that
true.
for
It's tertiary
SCC or
structure.
just in general
Just in
for?
general, UCSD. That's what you should do. Start doing now.
Yeah, please.
What is this?
Because what's you're just asking what stabilizes the T state?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I should put tertiary structure in there too, but let me make sure that is tertiary and
tertiary?
quaternary. I want to make sure that it's the correct both. So let me just make sure, because I don't want to give you wrong info. That would be the deaf of me.
Or when are you going to apply for state?
I'll take one more class after this and then I'll apply.
Oh, so you're not applying for next year?
I don't know yet. I need to go in and ask. I don't know all the deadlines.
Yeah, because I know my deadline for Arizona State's like November 1st. And I know that they've been telling me that I had to apply in October for San Diego State too.
I think it opened a second. I don't know if I need to go this round or not.
Yeah, I wanted to go check out like the transfer fair, but I totally was already like
Yeah.
halfway gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to go in. I just got a job UCSD.
But unless the
in
answer is
nutrition
not Saltbridge,
Because they said like
Sorry, Darwin, let me.
because you have to stay here one more semester
Oh.
before you can transfer anymore.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you still will be able to like take the class.
Because I have to retake anatomy. That's it though.
What grade did you
It
get?
is
Did you-
tertiary structure, but
I got a G because I missed
where I
the
wrote
week.
this from.
I didn't have my kids were sick and I didn't have any daycare.
In
So I got
order
zero.
for hemoglobin to be efficient,
I did all that.
oxygen transport T state must remain stable until
Intense.
primary
Yeah.
oxygen converts
I
into
heard
RC.
like
However,
people say anatomy was like so
However, in the
hard.
T
Like, would
state,
you
it's
agree?
highly unstable, which
Or-
pushes it towards the
Oh,
R
yeah.
state.
Especially if you take anatomy physiology
Hemoglobin
combo.
binds much more readily than hemoglobin.
Just memorization though. But yeah, it's hard.
Hemoglobin's
I feel like
affinity for
memorization
oxygen
like sticks a
decreases
little
in
bit
presence
better
of
with me
carbon
than like
dioxide. We got
realizing
that, we got
concepts.
that.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like in
CO2,
microbiology I did
hydrogen,
really
hemoglobin.
well, and
Yeah,
then this
it's
because it was just like memorizing, you know,
Yeah.
phrases and stuff.
Yeah.
But this is like
Affinity to.
This is
like
Yeah.
memorizing reactions and like steps or laws. I don't
Blank
know.
stabilizes
Yeah.
T.
because remember the
yeah,
no, I don't remember.
Saltbridge between.
So you remember we did that? No, pretty
Yeah,
much no.
that's what I'm just and histidine is a tertiary or quaternary structure.
Yeah, I just
think
got the
maybe-
offer letter yesterday.
It's
So
just
just
a
that.
amino acid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, because I'll be doing that for 2 years before I apply for it.
There's also no direct reaction between. Let me get to the salt bridges. Where's the salty at? It's down here.
Little pig fat.
Okay, here we go. In deoxyhemoglobin, hemoglobin is a quaternary structure. 3 amino acids form salt bridges that can stabilize the T-state quaternary structure.
Ooh, okay. Wait, so
So it's just quaternary.
It's both.
So three
but-
amino.
So it's quaternary and tertiary.
Yeah.
and salt bridges.
See, because I don't know if she'll ask
Well, the
it
thing
like,
Okay,
is,
so it
nothing
maybe
needs to be stabilized in the first 2 structures, so it doesn't really. It's kind of obvious, right?
what's that?
Nothing really needs to be stabilized because it's not truly in the T state unless it's in the tertiary or quaternary structure, anyways.
It's nothing stabilized.
Because
unless-
there's four. There's 4.
There's 4 subunits.
So the first 2, you're not in a position to be stabilized anyways. So this would only apply to these 2, the last 2. You know, see what I'm saying?
Talking
So
about.
it's kind of like a given. Well, because I thought to be in the T state, you have to be in the tertiary and quaternary. You can't be in it in the primary and secondary.
That's right.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So it's kind of like by default.
Oh,
See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because you're talking about T. Because T
But
is
you can't
not
stabilize
bound.
anything,
Yeah,
right?
you can't stabilize because you're not bound to anything.
Right.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
but your answer is salt bridges.
My answer, salt bridges stabilize. Oh, I see what
Because
you're saying.
there's 2 things to combine.
Oh, okay. I see.
There's two.
Maybe
There's not two in primary or secondary anyways.
Yeah, maybe it would have been better to state, okay, in deoxyhemoglobin, 3 amino acids form what that stabilize the T state.
So anything involving,
But what is
So
it?
there-
It's salt bridges.
It's
so
salt
there's
bridges.
4. There's hydrogen bonding, there's salt bridges.
Right.
What's the other ones?
There's
Disulfide.
disulfide linkages. There's the
Polar, non-polar.
Ion molecule or ion metal.
metal ion coordination,
Yeah.
Polar
and then there's the hydrophobic interactions.
So we could do like which ones do you use for T state, which ones do you use for R?
Yeah,
And I guess
let's for this one, my bad. Let me just do question mark.
no, it's good. I'm just trying to overthink, shocker.
No, I rather damn, that's sad. That was a question mark.
Let's make this harder than it needs to be. Do it.
I'll fix that one, and this will be the question that we ask at 2:00 when she comes to her office hours, so that we can clear that baby up. Deal?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Sorry guys.
I don't know if I'm going off, sorry, but are you?
I'm gonna go.
Okay.
So if you guys have any
I got till
questions,
2:30.
let me know, and I will ask them, and then put them in the whatchamacallit. But you already posted whatchamacallit there, right?
No, I didn't, but I will, because I didn't know if that, yeah.
Oh, it's all great. Okay, moving on. Are you sure?
So you're just gonna post the homework on there?
Yeah, I'll just,
No, sorry.
I will, I'll post, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll post it.
Yeah, because I wanted to like double check mine with yours.
So 16 at a low pH,
Number 16, at a low pH,
which is also a high acid.
which is a high acid, exactly. The added acid forms.
A lower pH. I'm just kidding.
Added acid forms.
Wait, what,
So-
what are you like?
so at a high
looking
acid- So basically you're kind of saying at a high acid, added acid forms.
I worded this weird because I didn't talk about the amino acids. Right now I'm talking about like the amino acids in histidine. So say I take histidine and I put it in an acidic environment. Okay. When I put histidine in an acidic environment where the pH is very low, what does the added acid form? What is it?
Well, I don't know what you're saying forms. It breaks the salt bridges and
Well, what I
connects to the histidine.
I put that it forms the salt bridge. So you're right about salt bridge, but I put that if you have a histidine in a acidic environment, I put that, and I can tell you where I got this one from, so it makes more sense. I said that it forms a salt bridge, which favors the release of oxygen to the tissue.
So so remember she said that it binds to the salt bridge, but then that's what ends up disrupting it, and then it binds to the residue, which is histidine.
Is that what she said?
Yeah.
The way I posed the next question would answer that, which I said, so for 17, I said at a high pH, right, if you take the histidine and put it in a very alkaline or basic environment, then the hydrogens get plucked off, or you lose the hydrogens, which will disrupt the salt bridge, and this favors oxygen binding. So I have that the first one, right, when you're in an acidic, when histidine is in an acidic environment, it'll favor the release. It'll form the salt bridge, and then in the basic environment, it will disrupt. So when it,
Not what she said.
and this
Because
is
we said when it is added, it disrupts the salt bridge, which is its tertiary structure. And then, because remember we were asking her, okay, it doesn't bind to the heme group, doesn't bind to the oxygen. Then this is the same thing, right?
I think this is the same thing. This is from, okay, I see what you're saying, because
And so she was like, actually, if we wanted to know the specifics, it disrupts that salt bridge, which then allows that to bind to histidine.
this is, I'll show you where this is coming from, and maybe it'll be more clear on my end. Because I could have worded this a little bit better. So I have
Yeah, because maybe we're just not talking.
the oxygen affinity of hemoglobin. All right, we're talking about
Affinity of hemoglobin,
Mhm.
yes.
Decreases, right?
Mhm.
Releases oxygen. The oxygen affinity of hemoglobin
Mhm.
decreases pH.
Decreases pH.
Oh, excuse
Okay,
me.
so it
The
lowers-
oxygen. Sorry, let me say that again. The oxygen affinity of hemoglobin decreases as pH decreases, which results in oxygen carrying capacity to increase. The
Okay,
increase.
so as there's more acid added, then
Mhm.
they're saying then it is allowed.
So it's pretty much just saying to
oxygen
get
bind
experience.
easier.
in
I'll just
the
say that one
nutrition
time.
field.
So
Because
as
if you don't
acid
have
is
any, do you read where it
increasing,
says if
they're
you
it's
don't have
allowing
any?
oxygen to bind,
There's
Yes.
other people who get
Yes.
which
Yeah.
makes sense because then it's breaking
So
other
volunteer.
bonds.
Volunteer.
with all those things,
Is that right?
and then try to get them in the field.
Doesn't it seem-
I don't know. I thought it was.
Because this is where this is coming.
No, I mean, there was a
Oxygen-
lot of
So the
information I
oxygen
haven't
affinity
found
of
out, so.
hemoglobin, right, decreases, releasing the oxygen as
Because I
the
thought,
pH
okay, like,
will
let's say, like, are you
decrease.
trying to be rich
So in an
nitrogen?
acidic
Yeah, the-
environment,
So
right,
the problem is
pH
if you don't
decreases,
follow that,
the
this is my
environment
research
is
because I started
acidic.
like,
You agree? And so
you're gonna hit a
the
point where you
oxygen
get a bachelor's
affinity
in
of
nutrition,
hemoglobin
but you hit a wall.
is
because
now
you
releasing
can't
that,
sit for the
that
test without
oxygen
the
in that acidic
So unless you
environment.
get into nutrition,
Whereas this, and then this results in the
I
increase
mean, I guess
of
it's different. I
O2
can't leave saying
carrying
you can
capacity
so you have a bigger
and a greater
chance.
delivery
but it's just
delivery
something
of
to-
oxygen to the tissue. So
Let's say you choose to
So
go somewhere where it's
if you
competitive.
don't
that
even look
makes
at this,
sense.
you
Nice
have
to
an,
have, like-
an environment, right? I
Well, I
already
have
told you
good
that the
grades and
tissue
I have all
is
this
considered a
stuff.
very acidic environment.
Yeah.
And an
This is my friend's ahead
increase,
of me at San Diego State.
this
Same.
will increase,
She said a lot of people would never
um,
think about it. And they like
the,
reach a point where they're like, crap.
sorry, Jesus,
It's too late.
the oxygen affinity.
And then,
for
like, if you
hemoglobin
don't get the DPD, you really
will
can't work
decrease,
at hospitals
yeah,
and
and
stuff
which,
like that.
so it
You just,
decreases
like-
the
Just have a bachelor's in
affinity,
nutrition. You work
and
with food
decreasing
companies,
affinity
but not make
is
as
the
much
same
money.
as releasing
You can't work in a
oxygen
clinical
into the
setting.
Yeah.
Okay, so
in an acidic
Which if
environment.
that's not what you
right, so all of that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then
There's just a lot
remind
of
me again, what
work.
did you say it forms? Salt
It forms
for
salt
what,
rich.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that,
And
that's
this
what I was thinking
favors
about
the
the
release
DPD
of
and
what?
everything.
Oxygen to the tissues?
Yes.
Because I just
So
did my
it's
interview for
funny,
the
so it's
job I
like
just got.
when the see
They
here
just
this
got
is where
said,
this comes
you know,
from.
we have an internship.
See, at a
here
low
for
pH,
for
right, acidic
scientific
environment,
reasons. I know,
that
that's why I'm
added
here.
proton on the histidine
Yes, I do.
forms a salt bridge
And that's where your friend was working before
with
she got into
the
that program?
aspartic acid.
No,
Remember
she's not
that
working in the
top one
field.
is supposed to be a net. That one's
And I told her
secret,
I'm
so I
being in
didn't
the
even
field.
draw it right.
She's
But
like, oh, I'll be
it's
fine.
the electrostatic attraction.
Oh, but she
the
hasn't actually
opposite-
got to the point where
opposite
the
and the positive,
internship.
the
No,
negative
she's
and the
on her
positive.
first
When they form,
year
that's a
of
salt bridge.
transfer
Remember the
from
word
here.
for salt
So she's
bridge
in the
is
next
just the
year from
attraction.
here.
Is it 2 years
You
or
know,
3?
Yeah, like but
Depending
I
on your
don't know, I
speed.
just don't understand what's going on here because she literally said.
Yeah, because
that.
I looked at like the classes
So-
that come after
So
this,
here's
and
where
it looks
the
like it's all
disruption
nutrition classes. Like,
At a
you're-
high pH,
There's no more of this, but
right?
she said these types
then
of things
it's
do
very
come up in the
basic,
Right.
right,
nutrition
in a
process.
basic environment.
But
Then
more when you
it'll
deal with vitamins.
lose the proton,
and like at a
Right,
light
that-
level
that
or like
proton
a
will
lighter
go
level.
away.
Okay.
and then this
Yeah, but she
disrupts
said
the
the
salt
nutrition concepts are really hard.
favoring oxygen binding.
So
So when it's disrupted, it favors.
Like there's
binding.
even like you'll probably just
But when
like
it
learn more
forms, then
chemistry
it
before
releases
nutrition in
oxygen.
nutrition classes.
or it's like you'll learn more nutrition, but you have to know certain
This one is
chemistry things to
confusing.
Yeah,
know.
Because
the
this is talking
nutrition
about
parts.
binding and then
That's what
releasing.
she explained.
Binding
So I
and
was like-
releasing. So this one I'll ask her about so that to try and make that more.
Like she'll say, if you have a
Okay.
patient,
Yeah.
has a
Move on.
tubal defect, she's
last-
pregnant, what vitamin do you need to
last thing.
increase in her diet?
So
Folic acid. And then I'll say like,
CO2's effect on
in what situation is folic acid
okay.
something.
CO2 affects. This is how CO2 affects folic. Okay, in the presence
I mean,
of
so far, all the
CO2,
stuff she's read off to me, I'm like, I know that. I know that.
does it increase or
So, hopefully
decrease? How did I ask
Hearing
this?
that,
In the
like-
presence of CO2, does it increase or decrease oxygen release? Okay, the presence of CO2 will increase or decrease oxygen release.
Is this the same one?
This is the same one, but this is now, instead of talking about hydrogen, this is now talking about CO2. Because remember,
So you're
I
saying
told you that
blue?
either CO2 and or
So,
hydrogen.
CO2
So if you have a,
Oxygen release will increase.
remember, do you
Yeah.
guys remember the chemical signal? Your chemical signal is CO2 and hydrogen, which hemoglobin uses what chemical signals to release O2? And I told you guys it was CO2 or H plus. So now I'm asking you, in the presence of CO2, will you have an increase in oxygen release or a decrease? You say
We need to
It
make
will
a
have an
chart.
increase, and then which means it'll have a lower infinity.
right. Right. That's it. You guys feel comfy with
So
that?
an
Because this
increase
is the
in-
signal. This is your signal. If you're alert, CO2 is here, hydrogen is here. Now it's time to release oxygen because we have excess of it, right? I'm sorry, this is a lot.
So this concept, how else could we like
Draw it.
strip it down and put like maybe like a picture?
Yeah, I'll do
You
a
know what I'm
pic-
saying? Like
this is what we're working up to. here.
oh, okay.
This is what we're working up to. All of this concept is I'm gonna summarize it here so that you have this in your mind. And then if you ask a question about any of this, you will have it in your mind for sure. Okay, so okay, here's the last question. Which effect is stronger at releasing oxygen?
CO2.
Right.
I don't know why I just guessed.
No, you know why?
Wait,
Because
so
of
you're
this.
saying, what do you mean? Which effect?
Okay, which effects? I could be spelling effect wrong. Guys.
Which effects?
Which effect is stronger at releasing oxygen? Which is the best way? Remember,
What do
I
you mean
asked
by
you
effect?
you can say which is stronger at releasing CO2 or sorry, which is stronger at releasing O2? Is it CO2 or is it hydrogen? Like remember, because I asked you, okay, these are your two chemical signals, right? CO2 and hydrogen ion. Okay, these are your two. So my question to you, right, from this question as from which one is your chemical out of the chemical signals that I'm giving you, which one is stronger at releasing O2? Which, like, if this in the presence of CO2 or in the presence of H or hydrogen, which one is better at causing O2 to be released into the tissue?
I thought it was the combination of the two.
It's not. It's what he said.
This is my limited
And
study.
so that you know it well, explain that to her. Because it'll help you.
No, I
You said you
guessed.
guessed? Okay, sorry. Okay, do you guys remember? This is CO2, right? And why? You remember this equation right here? Kristen, what did you tell me about this equation? About the buffer?
buffers?
Yeah,
What did I say? That's acid and that's conjugate base.
yeah. And she told me that this is acid conjugate base. And do you guys remember when I told you that this is your breathing is the most efficient way to get rid of, yeah. So when you're breathing, see the CO2, breathing is the most efficient way to get rid of CO2 that we have. Okay, and so in the presence of CO2, this is gonna be much more stronger at releasing oxygen.
But why?
Why? Because of the buffer system that exists in this equation, right?
It's not good enough for you anymore.
That's, I mean, okay. So, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll take a, because,
Like, I don't get it.
okay, let me pull this up.
Okay, so
Because I would kind of like to understand that reaction a little bit better because I was kind of confused.
Okay,
yeah, as soon as I see one of these, I'm like,
okay, let me pull this, let me pull up the notes from this.
Because I thought it was gonna be like the HB like added with the O, and then it wasn't. And
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of.
Okay.
it's like
But
my kids
this
ask,
part-
why? But why? But why, mommy? But
No, it's
Because
good.
it is.
So, okay, so
We can work for this one, huh?
yeah, that's all right. In the tissues, you have a high hydrogen concentration, which means the pH is low. Do you guys agree with that sentence?
Yeah.
In the tissues, you have
At
a
all
high
times.
at most, yeah, at all times. You can say for our purposes, at all times.
Okay,
Because
so you have a high acid, basically.
okay. And then,
which is a low pH.
Yeah.
Right.
I said I-
and so hydrogen
Yeah.
or acid,
She
sorry,
said we
concentration
didn't
of
have to worry
acid
about Fs.
binds
So in the test, there's not gonna be.
um
And I don't think there's gonna be
to
P's either because she
hemoglobin.
hasn't given us any example.
Hemoglobin.
She has.
Okay.
This is bound. This is the bound version.
A study there.
Is the-
Um,
Maybe she considered the question.
trying to think of a better way to.
What do you mean O2? The hemoglobin
This is
binds to the O2 binds.
yeah.
to
This
the-
is the bound one.
Don't even go with what she was.
Or the what's another one for this? The bound is R.
So it binds to the binded hemoglobin.
Yes.
Okay.
So the in the presence of hydrogen, right, and a more acidic environment elicits the response to start binding to O2 to send it to the tissue, right?
So you're saying at general times the tissue has a higher acidic, which is a lower pH. Then you're
Right.
saying here,
And then when you have that, then you have the Bohr effect. And what is the Bohr effect? You tell me what's the Bohr effect from what we've learned. The Bohr
I still don't. I'm still.
Yeah, 'cause yours doesn't.
So
Hemoglobin's affinity
Yeah.
for
O2,
oxygen
so it
to
wants
bind.
more O2.
It wants to release the goal for hemoglobin. What's the function of hemoglobin? What's the function? Is it
To
store
transport oxygen.
to transport
Transport
oxygen, right?
So
And
it
so-
wants it so it can carry it somewhere else.
Exactly,
Okay.
right? So when I'm
From the
breathing,
lungs to the tissue.
the lungs to the tissue,
Okay.
okay? And so when we're breathing in oxygen, right? We're breathing in oxygen. We have a high amount of oxygen in our lungs. The end goal is for hemoglobin to become an Uber and transport all our O2
To the tissues.
to the tissues where it's much lower pressure and much lower acidity. So why I asked this question, not only because it's from the lecture,
Oh, I see.
that's why when you have a high amount of CO2, which is super toxic, or toxic, our body sees it as toxic, we always breathe it off. We breathe it off. And breathing it off is the most efficient way to get rid of CO2. And that's why in the presence of CO2, it can hemoglobin is
Because it's bound.
because it's bound and it wants to release the O2 from the lungs to the tissue. Does that make sense the
Get
way I
warmer.
said it or not?
Get
So you're saying we're
I
giving off
haven't been able to look at
CO2,
this
right?
stuff.
Yes.
So our body's releasing more O2? Is that what you're saying?
Well, when you're breathing off, right? When somebody's hyperventilating, right? Right?
I don't
They're
know if
breathing
this is the
off
same, but-
CO2. It's considered toxic. That's why we breathe in oxygen and when we have a high amount of CO2 in our tissues, we try to breathe it off. But we have a balance that we have to maintain. We can't just have, oh, go ahead, sorry.
So the more O2 we have in our system, or the more CO2 we have in our
Well,
system as well?
Where do you have the most O2?
I think it's just kind of like a constant flow.
Yeah.
So we're constantly breathing it, oxygen in and
We
trying to
make CO2
Yes.
and we breathe in O2.
Yes.
We don't breathe in
I think
CO2.
it's made through
We could, but
Our goal is to breathe off CO2 because
Breathe-
too
okay.
much of
made
it.
in our body. Yeah.
The end goal is to, you know how, have you ever taken like a plants class and they talk about why trees are so important? Because they take in CO2, they utilize CO2.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, it's
It's
toxic,
toxic.
so we breathe it off. And this is the system, the buffer system that she said works to help us maintain that equilibrium, right?
Is that why they say it's good to talk to plants?
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why they say like having plants in your house is good.
Because
Yeah.
they actually use
They're
CO2.
breathing oxygen is toxic to them, so they're
Yeah.
breathing that out.
Okay.
We're breathing that in, so
So-
we're a nice exchange for each other.
That's why we love plants. So I know that was a
I
lot.
can't keep plants alive.
I know,
I can't either. I should maybe breathe on the like.
I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Okay, so
They
here's the
die.
summary. Let's do the summary real quick. Okay, in the tissue, I promise this will be much better. This will
Drive it home, girl.
drive it out. This is the main look. At the end of the day, if you didn't hear any of this, right? if you didn't hear any of this, if none of this made sense, this will be your meat and potatoes for the exam. All right.
Muscle to okay.
And I'm not gonna, I'll go step by step. Okay, April. In the tissue.
I
In the
barely looked at
tissue.
this stuff.
All I'm looking for is an up or down. Okay, so April, in the tissue, CO2 is up or down? High or low?
Low.
CO2, remember it's like
High.
it's like an acid, okay?
And it's
I-
gonna
So
be
CO2
opposite.
is an acid.
And so in the lungs is
Horrible.
low. Okay, don't make fun of my lung.
I'm
You guys making fun of my
I'm
lung.
making fun of
Oh,
my
wait,
lack
wait.
of knowledge.
That's why.
It kind of looks like a fetus, but that's just because you.
This one- That was supposed to be like an arm going like this.
Okay, I'm gonna draw
This is
your little
moving.
thingy here.
And then, okay, hydrogen, or sorry, proton. You can think of a proton or acid. And let me put the concentration so it makes more sense. So in the tissue, Kristen, concentration of hydrogen is considered high or low in the tissue.
So what's the thought process behind this? Do I have to think about whether it's hemoglobin or myoglobin?
Right now, I'm differentiating, relative differentiation between tissue and lungs.
Okay, so I just said I should
Relatively.
just like know these things.
Pretty
This
much,
is- okay.
yeah, just in case she poses this. Right?
So I don't really know. I'm gonna go high in tissue and low in lungs.
Right,
Okay.
right, right, because I told you, and you guys told me that tissue, in the tissue, it tends to be much more acidic. So for relative purposes, high concentration of hydrogen as compared to the lungs. Okay, Daniel. So if I have a high amount of hydrogen or acid concentration in my tissue, what is the pH gonna look like? Right,
Low.
right. It's gonna be down, and then that means it's gonna be up, higher. And then I'm gonna show you where I got this on a lecture too, so it makes
That's
sense.
from last time.
Ish.
So does that mean
Hemoglobin's affinity
in the
402.
lungs?
Say what?
In the lungs, it'd be more bounded.
Right. Oh, you're talking about for affinity?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. In the lungs, right? We breathe in oxygen, right? And when the oxygen gets into our lungs, it tries to bind very tightly, right? With all those four subunits bind extremely tightly. And so hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen is up or down, you tell me. High or low as compared to tissue.
It's high.
Right. Whereas here it's low. Okay, these last two are gimmies. Okay, and the fact is that in the lungs, there's a lead or a favoring of oxygen to bind in the lungs, whereas in the tissue, oxygen's main goal is to release oxygen into the tissue.
Okay, so
Excuse me, sorry,
wait, what are you
hemoglobin's.
saying?
So sorry.
So in
it's
the
a-
lungs, O2 binds, and in the tissue, it releases. Okay.
Right, right? And that makes sense, right? Because if you're running, if you're moving, if you're getting active, you're starting to release oxygen to the tissue so you can maintain that hemostasis and try to have a balance and get rid of toxic molecules. And so when you talk about the T state and the R state, right, the tense and the relax, right, then in the lungs, the R state is favored, right? Roxy is favored in the lungs, whereas in the tissue, the tense state is favored, and somebody tell me why.
Because
Remember,
it can't take any more oxygen in.
Because it's saturated.
this is
Not in tea.
remember T
No, it's
is
opposite.
T is oxygenated, right? And R is oxygenated and T is deoxygenated, right? Because we're trying to
Is it because
release.
T can take more?
Because-
Wait, which one takes?
That's okay. It's okay. Think of it. Think about. We all take. Think of it like this, right? This is T is the oxygenated
So it's R.
free.
The answer I'm looking for is R.
R. Oh, for what? What? For. Okay, never mind. At the end of the day, R, it's bound, right? I
Uh-huh.
told you it binds. R means it's bound to the oxygen. and T is releasing. Like I told you, that the oxygen releases, it releases oxygen in the tissue, so that the T is favored.
So
That's it. That's my whole presentation. The end.
the unbound doesn't want to take oxygen, right?
The unbound does want to take it.
Okay, it does want to take it.
That's why, yes, it wants to take it. It just doesn't have it.
Wait, yeah.
And
What was
that's
it?
what makes it unstable.
Yes.
For which one?
T.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
But so does it actually take oxygen or no?
It does, just not when it's in that state.
Oh, okay.
Well,
It
will
goes back
take
and
it at
forth,
that-
right? Yeah, like
Yeah.
she was explaining that. The whole R and T was really confusing, and
It
then in
is.
like the book, it didn't really like use the words R and T.
No.
It like just used it like deoxy and oxy
And then,
and
yeah.
bounded.
I wonder
Yeah.
I wonder how deep she wants to go on that. Like she was just saying that the T and the R, like which one is she gonna use? I don't know. So I'm learning them all so that by the time we get to
Yeah, because you got the
the
deoxy
test, I can get rid of
bound.
what I don't need to know or not focus on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm chilly.
That was not bad, right? Because now we're ahead
Good.
for the test. At least when you study this again, by the time we get to the test, we'll all be like, we won't know it perfectly, but it's not going to be new, right? Can you imagine trying to learn this stuff in 2 weeks and not being exposed to it? Like now you've
Before.
seen it, you know. I try to decrease my stress
Yeah.
level, but
Now time to read chapter 6. Oh, I should probably finish chapter.
I know. I wonder if she finished chapter 4 then, because I feel like I'm like still looking at things in chapter 4.
No,
I don't think she
she
doesn't really
stopped
look at the
halfway, and then like, then she was like, okay, I'm gonna go to chapter 6, and I felt like she said she was gonna go back to chapter 4.
Remember,
maybe.
remember in the beginning she said that she doesn't really use the book. Oh yeah, she
She
said
said
you
that.
can if you want, but she doesn't really go by it. That's why she never really knows what chapter we're in.